Here we go. Okay, welcome everyone. Another episode of my podcast, Living Stronger Longer, i.e., living your best life after 40. And today, taking a little bit of a detour from the usual fitness based thing, although we may well go into that because I know that Paul Arnold, my guest today, does have a background in sports and fitness as well. But Paul has recently released a book called Business Strategy Success Principles. So Paul and I don't know if Paul's aware of this, we have some similarities in our background. I'm not a published author, but he is currently also works as a wealth consultant. And of course, I came from financial services in where I worked for 30 years, and he's done similar things. Now he's gone off screen, so all right, he's back on screen. So I don't know if he just took his video. Just want to make sure our internet didn't cut out. So he has built various businesses. So I'm gonna look forward to find out about the various businesses he's built before. It says 5 businesses and consulted with 4 of the leading financial services companies in North America. He supports small business, and he also operated a 5-chapter networking club in Ottawa, which I've probably heard of. I'm thinking that I may have been at one of those meetings. Wouldn't surprise me. He's also a professionally trained musician, so a little bit of a renaissance man here, a lot of different things. Conductor, composer, performs guitar, piano, and cello with local ensembles in Ottawa. As a matter of fact, he will be performing on July 16 as part of the 200th anniversary of Cars, Ontario. So his book, as I mentioned previously, is called Business Strategy Success Principles. And it's set for release on July 12th. It will be available through Amazon, but Paul, always a big supporter of local businesses, also wants to point out that Indigo is one of the places where you can get his book, and I will give you more information on his contact info and whatnot. So Paul, thanks very much for taking the time to do this with me today. I'm looking forward to learning more about you and what you do. So maybe a little bit about how you came to be today, deciding to write a book. You've got a background, whatnot. So what would you add to your bio that I haven't said already?
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here, Richard. Thanks so much for inviting me. And so Business Strategy Success Principles, we finally at the tail end of this big 2-year project. And just to give you a little bit of a background, it first started when, as you mentioned, I was running a business club here in Ottawa and met with a lot of very successful entrepreneurs like yourself and interviewed very successful, multimillionaire, even billionaire entrepreneurs as well. And what I wanted to do is to create a book showing the best practices, and even with my own experience being 20 to 30 years in sales and marketing, and then running my own business for 13 years, that I wanted to share some best practices for starting a new business and to become successful in that endeavor. So I was originally going to write a book called So You Want to Become an Entrepreneur, eh? And was for new entrepreneurs, on things like sales, marketing, branding, but starting off with, okay, here's the reasons why businesses fail. Here's the top 5 reasons. So number 1 is don't do any of those 5 things. And secondly is that often we get inspired. We love certain things, and we really want to start a business based on what our passion is. But we also have to ask ourselves, well, is this something that's attainable in today's market? Is this something that we can actually sell? Is this a product or service that people can buy? So I encourage in my book, watching either Dragon's Den or Shark's Tank, it gives you a good sense of really what's a marketable, saleable product and service. So that's really the number 1 thing, is make sure that you have a good idea to begin with. And then once you do have a solid idea, then it's a matter of, sales, marketing, branding, communications, building your team, all these fundamental steps to building a successful business. So what I want to do is show the best practices and really the number 1 things to do. So the book is broken down into 7 different parts, including, first is your plan, the essential of goal planning, time management. Part 2 is your brand, the importance of building a brand that people like, know, and trust. Part 3 is your purpose, understanding your personal why and creating your vision. Part 4 is your communication, the essentials of preparation and strategic sales communication. The 5th part is your people, importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. Part 6, I'm particularly excited about is your pivot. So how to successfully change the direction of your business strategy. And part 7 is your strategy. So importance of having fun, finding enjoyment in your business, right? Because mindset is such an important part of being a business owner and having that growth mindset. Because if you think you're going to fail, well, you will. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will fail. So it's
Right.
important to believe in yourself 100% and have that resilience, because at the end of the day, 50% of businesses fail within the first year, and by the 5th year, it's about 80% businesses. So it's really important to have. The other thing too is to not be afraid of failure, because sometimes you try one thing, it doesn't work out. Well, you try something else, and sometimes it takes a few shots before you got a solid D. And I share some of the mistakes that I made as a business owner, that result in failure, and some of the things. So it's also an opportunity for people to learn from my mistakes that I made, and to help them and get that little edge in terms of being successful as an entrepreneur. So that's a little bit of the background overall of the book, and how it came to fruition. And I took after that initial book idea, I actually took a book writing course, and was introduced to Morgan James Publishing firm. I was super impressed with the David Hancock, who created Morgan James and actually named it after his 2 kids. And we share a lot of similar values. And the reason I wanted to go with a New York publisher is because he had the international distribution, which I know I would never have a clue about how to get that distribution, other than to the Ottawa market that I've been a part of. So that's the reason why I went with a New York publisher. And so really excited. On July 12th, the book's going to be released not only in Canada, not only in the US, but also London, Australia, and and there's also linkages to other parts of the world. So it's really exciting endeavor, and really exciting for this upcoming launch.
Well, I congratulate you on setting the goal of writing a book and carrying it through to fruition. I have to admit that I've thought about it. I even at different times committed to doing it, but I have not followed through on writing the book. So I commend you for doing that. One of the things, now, does any of your book deal with the idea, because I confess I haven't read it yet, as to whether or not you should be an entrepreneur or not in the first place? Because it struck me as I worked for a major financial services company recruiting self-employed contractors, so not quite the same as technically a sole proprietorship, but as you know, when you're with a financial service company, it's like you're in a partnership with a major corporation, as opposed to starting from scratch. But it appeared to me that some people just couldn't shake the employee mentality and get the entrepreneurial mindset that you referred to. So is there any part of the book that gets you to do a self-evaluation to determine whether or not being an entrepreneur is really the right thing for you? Or
Yeah, no, and you made some really valuable points, Richard, and especially working financial services or even real estate. Sometimes it actually makes a lot of sense to work with a major firm or international successful, because a lot of the branding, especially the compliance and the risk, are very important things to know. So by partnering with a larger firm is important, but at the same time, you can still be an entrepreneur. I started my career with IG Wealth, and it was a company where I did have some flexibility to be an entrepreneur. I also worked for Edward Jones. Again, you are really an entrepreneur, but you have that brand behind you, which makes it a lot easier for people to know and trust you. But I would agree that it does take certain types of personalities tend to, often, for example, you see people that are successful athletes tend to do well as business owners, because you do need that drive and that resilience and be able to push through obstacles. It's not for everyone. You do have to have certainly a strong mindset, because as I said, 80% of this is your mindset and being able to believe in yourself and be successful and push through those obstacles, because you will have a lot of obstacles. It is an uphill battle. And there's also a lot of financial investing, right? So there's a lot of capital that goes into starting a business. I mean, another thing I talk in my book is the importance of scaling, right? So starting small, and don't throw everything, mortgage your home and everything to try it out, right? Start small and scale. So often, starting a home-based business like yourself makes a lot of sense. That way you're not, expending a lot of capital and renting a facility or that type of thing. So I think that's a big part of it as well, is being realistic and scaling your operation.
Well, and I like the points that you're making about managing expectations. It's not the fact that there might be obstacles, there most definitely will be obstacles. Because I think, in my view, I've seen a lot of people, they go into business and they've romanticized the idea they're going to be their own boss, going to have business, and they're going to become, rich and famous type of thing. And then when the going gets tough, as it inevitably does, and I'm sure as you interviewed people, you probably, I'm going to guess here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but probably a common thread of a lot of the successful people that you've interviewed for this book was several early years of really brutally hard struggle, and maybe even some failed businesses before the one that worked. Would that be somewhat accurate?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, just to mention a couple of people that I interviewed, Bruce Linton basically created $1 billion company from scratch just by acquiring, and he talks about, he was like this close to being bankrupt versus, launching into, and one of the things he talks about is also taking advantage of changes in government policies as well. So part of it sometimes is luck, and then he just was in the right place at the right time to become like incredibly successful. But at the same time, then he gets fired from his own company, right? From Canopy Growth Corporation, and then basically had to take another direction. I often, when I'm interviewing Bruce, I always refer to him as he's like the Steve Jobs of Canada, because he built an incredibly successful company, and then and of course after he was let go, you can see the price of and he was a huge voice in the cannabis industry as well, but the whole industry really took a dive after he was left. So I wonder if one day maybe they'll bring him back in, but who knows, like kind of like Steve Jobs. And another Steve Cody is another person that I interviewed. He's a local, very successful. He's built, he started with like a window cleaning business, and then started, Cody Party Supplies. And then he he was building up Ruckify too, which became very successful with some other, entrepreneurs. And he talks about, the importance of building a solid team and hiring generalists, as you build a team. He built like an over 50-person team, and also, had a really solid marketing strategy. I saw his, brochure that I even send out to other investors, who are looking at making $1 million investments. And it's very strategic. I also interviewed JT Fox, and he went to Chicago. He's from Montreal, then went to work in Toronto, and then actually moved to Chicago to build a real estate empire. And but he went there in his pickup truck with like $80 or something in his pocket, and he had like $30,000 of debt on his credit card. Just finally got like a really good real estate, flipped a property and made like $30,000-$40,000, and that just like was a start. And he's like incredibly driven entrepreneur, just always like gung ho. And then he got into public speaking as well, and then that's further helped him build his coaching practice, and he's one of the most successful strategy and wealth coaches in the US. A lot of people kind of get turned off because he is really extremely driven, and some people will turned off, but he's been extremely successful. And that's what I like about him too, is like just like athletes competing at the top level, he's doing that. And even when the COVID pandemic hit, he pivoted his business because he couldn't do his public speaking anymore, focused on his coaching, moved back to Chicago again because he was based in Florida, and is building. And I've actually joined his organization as well, and participating in one of his final mega success events, where he has several celebrities, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, and incredibly Michael Douglas. There's Jillian Michaels, incredibly successful entrepreneurs, and that's his big thing, is also celebrity marketing. So if you want to kind of go to that next level, that's he kind of provides a way to do that. So by working with interviewing these very extremely successful entrepreneurs, it gets you that a little bit of an edge in knowing, okay, well, they've already done it, so they know the formula, and then you can just learn from their and that's what I also share in the book is some of the best practices that I picked up from interviewing those very successful entrepreneurs.
So you mentioned luck as a factor, and I don't know, in your experiences in the financial services, did you ever hear of the Kinder brothers? Jack and anyways, they used to talk, and they were talking about a specific practice, but the point was they made, it says, will this practice guarantee success? And they said, no, it won't. Even if you do this one and out, it won't. But I can guarantee you can't possibly succeed without it. So, to me, you do the best possible strategies that you can, you follow all the basic principles, and then you're going to put the odds in the best possible favor that you can. But, sometimes there's going to be things outside your control that go out. If you've ever read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell and things like that, and you mentioned about people being in the right place at the right time, there's also sometimes people in the wrong place at the wrong time. The other thing you mentioned that I picked up on is the idea about a certain gentleman that wasn't that popular because he was really driven. What I've found over the years is that very successful people are not always nice in the amiable type of way because they're driven. And my take on that is they tend to be hard on themselves. And as a result, sometimes they can be a little tough on the people around them. They require a lot of themselves. They ask a lot of themselves. And so they have difficulty with people who don't seem to do that. You think of Michael Jordan, if you watch that special on him, or I read his biography, and Michael Jordan wasn't a real super nice guy, even though in the marketing and everything, when he was selling products, he came across as a nice guy, but he was extremely tough guy, right? So I think that's part of it as well, that you have to be, that kind of a driven personality to be able to do this. And because you talked about also them being risk takers, the gentleman who went down with $80 and things like that. I used to joke around sometimes with the company I worked with, how we could somehow, and I would say this tongue in cheek, but I'd want to say, how can we put it into our recruiting material? You don't have to be crazy to work here, but it helps. And because I do think to some extent that to be an entrepreneur, because if you look at two separate statistics, if you look at the failure rate of new businesses, which you quoted earlier, 80% failure rate in the first 5 years, well, nobody, it would seem, in their right mind would ever start a business based on that stat. Now, if you look at the average incomes of established business owners, then if you look at that statistic in isolation, then everybody would be lining up at the door to start their own business, right? Because in general, people who work for themselves more than employees. But, going back, not to take over the interview, but going back to the luck thing, people might say, well, I'm going to go and play it safe and be an employee. But even there, one day you come to work and you realize that an entrepreneur that you work for has gone out of business, or maybe part of their strategy is downsizing and you're just a casualty in that. So at the end of the day, there's no escaping some luck, right?
Yeah, no, there's, you made a lot of really valid points. And, there's an expression, the harder you work, the luckier you get is a good one. And yeah, on your point, a lot of people, feel comfortable in the 9 to 5 day jobs. And then all of a sudden, what the reality of the situation too is, for example, you could be let go and then replaced within a week. So, if you're putting all this overtime and hard, effort into the fact that you could just be replaced just like that, or as you gave an example, that company goes out of business while you're at a luck. So it's a matter of, some people, it's more like some people really, that security is really important to them, and they'll, they want that. They can't really, it's not really for them to be an entrepreneur, but those that want to have control of their future and also want that potential to make a lot more wealth for their lifestyles. And that you nailed it too. It's like only 20% will be successful entrepreneurs. And it takes, I think back to when I started my first financial services business, and it was all, we were out there door knocking, cold calling, we're running seminars and trade shows and everything. It's like the expression, you throw the past on the fridge and see what's going to stick, right? And I remember a lot of times like not being successful and getting doors. And then it was just what happened one day, and this is when in Kingston, I was walking around a neighborhood, knocked on a door, and just happened, it was an engineer. He was just changing companies, with his firm, and they just happened they're looking for someone to manage their retirement and their investment assets. And that was my big first $10,000 commission, right? And actually ended up buying an engagement ring for my first wife, at the time, for the commission I made off of that one deal. So it's that, it is the feast or famine mentality, right, for the entrepreneur. But it's when those when those opportunities, universe works your way, then it can be very fruitful on that. But it's definitely not going to be a regular income stream coming in. And at the same time, if someone is interested in becoming an entrepreneur, potentially going through this pandemic and realizing, wow, like I was especially if you're in the retail space, and then, being, let go during that period of time. And, and I do see a lot more people becoming entrepreneurs, but you also, like, you don't necessarily have to, give up your day job right away. Like, you could also, you want to get to that point where, okay, things are going well, I can really, focus on this 100%, or even working part-time. So you don't have to like dive in feet first, or sometimes maybe you have a spouse or another, or you're living with your parents, that you can at least have because it's like the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? You first have to have shelter and food and water before you can
Right.
go to those higher things on the pyramid. So obviously you have to be realistic in that. But if you get to the point where you can then go 100% in your business, I mean, it's the world's your oyster, right? But it does takes a lot of careful planning. And sales and marketing is extremely important for running a new business, because you have to, if no one, it's that the know, like, and trust factor, right? If no one knows about your business, well, how can they possibly buy your product or services? They also have to like they have to know you, they have to also like you and trust you, right? So like, and trust factor is incredibly important. And the other thing I also talk in my book is tuning into the YFM factor, right? So that what's in it for me.
Right.
Because you'll see, oh, you think I have a wonderful product, everyone's going to want to buy my product, but you really have to see it from your customer's perspective. What is it really that what's going to be that buying signal? What's going to be that customer journey to bring them to want to buy your product? And what's and another mistake I see with with entrepreneurs too is, okay, I have this product, come buy my product, but you really have to be sensitive to your customer, right? And seeing it from their perspective. And maybe you have to make some slight adjustments to find, okay, to just customize a product just so it's gonna be the perfect fit for what they're looking for, especially early on. I mean, it's one thing to maybe you're 10, 20 years into a very successful business. Well, you figured out what works and what doesn't, but early on you do have to be flexible, right? And it might even be that you end up kind of pivoting your business to find something that's even better than what's even more something that people that need for their lives. Whether you're helping them lose weight, or you're helping them things become more convenient, or you're helping coach them into doing something, whatever it is. But you got to find the right fit. And of course, credibility is important as well. So whether you have that certification or that, and that could be, there is the school of hard knocks, right? There's nothing to say that you can't be self-taught and experience in that, but also it does help, like, to have some kind of credibility in your field. So myself, like, before I wrote that chapter on pivoting your business, well, I actually got certified as a business analyst, and I'm doing my MBA management consulting. So I really know in depth like how to do a business pivot. So I basically took that business analyst knowledge areas and translated that to work for a business owner, and just to simplify first planning out your strategy, and then understanding who your stakeholders are, and then actually looking, okay, where you are now, where you want to be, and then how to get there. And I will tell you the biggest thing that I've learned from running businesses is understanding risk, because you have to understand if you're going to make a change in your business, or if you're going to pivot your business, you really have to understand what the risks are in doing so. Because if you don't understand the risk, and I've seen this, for example, businesses all of a sudden change their entire brand to like do something else, but people are already had been customized to that brand. So if you look at the large companies, like for example, Cottonelle or something, if they're one company's taking over there, they'll actually literally put the new company in small letter, keep the old, and then gradually over time they'll change the size of the brands, right, to gradually adapt it to your customers so that they can be comfortable on that customer journey with you. So understanding risk, and that's when one of the mistakes that I made even with this business club is I was trying to grow too fast and launch the new brand and not but also like when I started growing new clubs, I wasn't sensitive to some of the risks that were involved in doing that, and end up like shooting myself in the foot and making like a fatal mistake, which ended up causing that to eventually collapse. So it's important to understand those risks, and I do discuss that in my book. Again, like you can learn from my mistakes that I made, and so that you won't repeat them yourself in that perspective. But yeah, it's all these very important steps that you need to take in your business. And the second part of the book is really, okay, well, you might be, okay, I'm running a business, I'm like 3 or 4 years into it, but I'm just not getting anywhere. Like I'm kind of stagnant. So then I want to give some new ideas to how, okay, well, if you kind of you've reached that ceiling, how to kind of push through that. So some strategies to take your business to the next level. So for example, like looking at finding that maybe you can really focus on, okay, here's this ideal client I want to get. So here, what are some strategies you can actually implement in order to get that new customer that you would make all the difference for your business? What are some new things? And I also talk about the importance of mindset. So having a clear vision, clear why, even doing a vision board, right? So understand, okay, where do I want to, what's the reason why you want to grow this business? Like, what's your personal why? Is it because you want to, buy a nice house? You want to buy a nice car? You want to go take your family on a lovely vacation? Well, you can actually visualize these things and actually, and focus on, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want. And some of your listeners may not believe in that type of things, but I've read, Think and Grow Rich and, The Secret and these other things that, if you put enough thought and energy into something, eventually it will manifest itself. So you have to ask for the universe in order for these things to come to fruition. And one of my the entrepreneur colleagues, Shannon Ferguson, really appreciated that chapter on visualization, because that's something that she believes in. Now her and her partner and her husband are running a very successful fan safe business, and they focus a lot on that visualization on, okay, here's where they want to get. And then it's basically, if you there's a Jim Carrey story where he wrote himself that $10 million check, right? And then just happened to get that Dumb and Dumber, where he got like $10 million for that movie, right? So it's mindset and manifesting that success you want to have is incredibly important as an entrepreneur. Because again, like if you're worried you're going to fail, if you have concerns, I mean, if you think, God, I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, I'm not, like, well, though, that's what you're manifesting to the universe, right? So your self-talk to yourself is going to get manifested to the universe. So you're going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. You think you're going to fail, well, guess what? You will fail. But if you think you're going to be successful and you believe in that 100%, and you believe you're going to, okay, I want to make $100,000 in 2 years from, be making $100,000 a year 2 years from now. I want to be making 500,000 in 10 years from now, or whatever, or $1 million. Like that, if you focus on and set out these goals, and I have actually spreadsheets in my book where you can actually write out, okay, if I can grow 5% each year, here's where I want to be. And you could do that even over a 20-year period. Right. And so I have spreadsheets, so you can actually write out all your budget, your expenses, and then write out what your goals are for each year, just incremental growth for that. And you might blow through in one of these years. And you always have to be reevaluating those things as you go along.
So do you provide, as well as, of course, having authored the book, but then somebody reads the book and decides, I'd like to do this. but I need some accountability. Would you provide coaching as well for a
Yeah,
person?
so I do offer coaching as well. It's simply like a 6-month program, one-on-one. Do 10 sessions of coaching. And you also mentioned about writing your own book. That's another thing that I'm going to be launching, is actually a book writing workshop as well, because I believe that this is an incredibly important part to building your credibility as an entrepreneur, is writing your own book. So, and it's actually, there is a formula to writing your own book, to write a book that's actually going to be saleable, because a lot of times, as book writers, the way we think of it, writing a book is more like a manual, right? So if you like a tractor manual, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, but it's actually, you want to be thinking about what people like to read, and people like to hear stories. And so, storytelling is just as important as your teaching when you want to write a successful book.
Right.
So yeah, so I'm going to be implementing some things to help other business owners, entrepreneurs, become successful, and even through, we're both involved with Toastmasters. That's another way to help network and mastermind with other entrepreneurs
So
as well.
that,
So those.
yeah, storytelling. I'm reminded of books like The Wealthy Barber and The Richest Man in Babylon, which basically were taking some fairly basic financial principles that probably in a technical manual would probably be pretty dry and boring. But because those books sort of made it like a storytelling thing, those books became bestsellers. You're probably familiar with The Wealthy Barber. The Richest Man in Babylon was written back in the 20s or 30s. Still, I think one of the books I would recommend to anybody on just some basic financial principles. Now, one reason I asked about the coaching part of it is what I'm hearing in a lot of what you're saying is the difference between working in your business and working on your business. Because as an entrepreneur, you can get extremely busy to the point where sometimes the business is running you instead of running your business. And of course, you can read books and articles and different things, but then next thing you know, you're in the swamp up to the proverbial what and crocodiles, and the business sort of takes over. So the coaching thing, I think, where the value comes in is that accountability of saying, okay, we're going to put together a mission statement and let's talk about it. Let's use this workshop. Let's use this tool to figure out what your values are, and let's put together a budget, put together these various things, because I know when I first started, I was able to get a grant from the Leeds Grenville Small Business. I forget the acronym now, but it was a quasi-government thing that was helping new people to get started out, and you could get $5,000. And of course, part of the deal was you went for, I forget now, 8 or 12 weeks of weekly sessions and different things, and it was really valuable. And at the time, I mean, the sessions were actually far more valuable than the 5 grand, right? The 5 grand sort of gets you in, but the sessions are more valuable. And even now, 3 years in, I've done okay, but just listening to you today, I realized that, I'd have to dig up some of those things that I did 3 years ago in the workshop and say, what was my vision again? And what was these types of things? Because um, I've had good success, but sometimes certain strategies will get you this far, but then they might prevent you from getting this far. Because once you're this far, you're so busy that you're just, starting to just do that over and over again. I mean, that's one of the things for myself pivoting now, is trying to get more of an online presence. But I'll look forward to hearing more about your book writing workshop. That sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, and again, you made some really important points, Richard, about working, in your business versus working on your business, and to be very successful. And one of the things that JT said is I asked him, are there anything you do differently? And he said, well, I probably would have hired a coach earlier. And really, having a coach, especially someone who you can learn from, is incredibly important, because they can see things from another perspective, which you may not see. And especially, having a coach that maybe knows a lot more than you. And I've invested in doing multiple coaching sessions with people like JT, because it just takes you to that whole next level, rather than doing all the mistakes yourself and figuring out yourself. you could just, pay someone who's already done it, and made all those mistakes already, and can show you, okay, here's what to do, here's what not to do. And I think that's very important. And if you're not going to invest in coaching, then even in reading some books, like or like some that you mentioned on being an entrepreneur, and that you can learn from. And that's one of the reasons I wrote this book, is I wanted to provide a resource for people that want to start their business, and just kind of like everything you need to know about building a successful business is right there. So it's like a blueprint for how to create a successful business. So yeah, that's incredibly important. And I also, you talk about, you could get, so you're so involved in your business itself, then you can't really get beyond that. And also building a team, I think, is incredibly important. So you want to, if you really want to build a successful business, it should be one that you're doing all the work yourself, right? You want to build your team that complements your skills. And you probably heard the 4 different personality types, and you might be really a good people person, and that, but maybe not so good at, I don't know, like websites or say accounting, like, so hiring people that are your weaknesses. Because I think another mistake that people make is they hire people like themselves that they really get along with, but you want to hire people that has complementary skill sets to you. And even like virtual assistants, I have a couple of virtual assistants that I'm working with, can help with the administrative tasks as well. And so if you hire the right people, you can even get to the point that you're just like kind of sitting back and just enjoying seeing your business flourish, right? Like, for example, even successful, running a gym, like having some other, people, like there's a couple local, like Greco, for example, a local very successful gym where Tony Greco, he hires, people to run his various facilities. And then he has the flexibility for you to focus on rather than in the business, right? So if you work with the right people, and that's another thing that Steve Cody talks about is when you're hiring those generalists, and it makes just life a lot easy, and then you can actually really enjoy your business, right? If you hire the right people who are doing all the work for you. And so there's often we have to, the biggest thing is being able to trust, put your faith in other people that they will do a good job, but you have to also reward them for that, right? So whether it's giving them equity in your business, or rewards for achieving certain landmarks, like certain targets, where they're rewarded for that. But I see a lot, like, I think another mistake entrepreneurs make is that they try to do it all themselves, and they're just like, they don't really want to give the reins to anyone else, and it just makes it that much more challenging, right? And that's a case where, well, you're going to just get pulled in 10 different directions, especially if you're working in a an industry where there are more complicated, like compliance or governmental regulations that you have to comply with, or city civil things that you have to deal with. So having the right team is so important, and be able to scale through that. But I really believe wholeheartedly in having a coach help you through that, and investing in. I invested in another coach too. I did 10 sessions with him as well, and just help, because you're getting that other perspective, and you're learning from other people. And there's 2 types of coaches, right? There's business coaches and there's life coaches. Right. And ideally, you want to have someone who can kind of help you on both sides, like finding that business life balance, but also make the right business strategies for your business. And I've talked to other very successful entrepreneurs, and they do work with coaches, that, because you gotta, there's always new things to learn, and things are always changing out there, right? So for me, like, I'm not very good at websites, so I always look to hire people to create a website, or that tech. But I'm very good on social media, so I like to do that, that marketing aspect on the social media, but I do need to hire people to do the website, and I hire VAs, virtual assistants, to do the admin work, and that then you can enjoy your business a lot more. And even the financial services business I run, I believe in working smarter, not harder, and just, you got to do the right things early on, and then you can just kind of then more enjoy what you're doing, and then spend less time of it, and then get to do, have more time to do what you enjoy in your business. So, there's definitely an art and science to running a successful business.
So I want to be conscious of time. I have a client shortly, but is I'm listening to you, and I'm going back to your bio, and one of the things that you just sort of mentioned it in passing, both of us, and how we got to know each other is we're both Toastmasters. So you're a Toastmaster, you're running a financial services business, you've written a book, you're doing some coaching, you also play music, and you do that on a volunteer basis, and I think someone on a professional basis as well. And I don't know your personal, whether there's a family in there and whatnot. So as parting words or whatnot on just time management, because it sounds like, I mean, my main excuse, and I'm going to call it what it is an excuse for not having written my book, is not having enough time. The truth is, I simply haven't made enough time. But it is, of course, somewhat of a challenge when you're juggling a lot of different things. So, any final words on juggling and multitasking? I mean, you've kind of answered that somewhat with hiring people to your website, virtual assistants, things like that. But anything else that you would add, or anything else you'd like to add, sort of in closing today?
Yeah, well, I've been fortunate and blessed to have some other areas of that I've succeeded in music and sports, academics, and business. And I like to compartmentalize my life. I do have a wife and two lovely girls, as a family here, and you have to make the time to do what you enjoy. And and of course I have the family time during the day. But I created my life and my businesses so that I do have time to pursue music. I typically take like a music project on every year. One year I'll do a guitar CD, one year I'll do a flute and guitar, one year I did a Christmas CD. This year I'm doing more folk entertainment, the local community. For example, the 200th anniversary of Cars, I just did Osgood Porch Fest as well. And so we're doing more like that's like gospel and folk type performances. But yeah, you do have to create the time. And at the same time, in the summertime, like financial services is more of a lull, so you don't have as much activity going on, although we are going into a recession this year. So you have to obviously keep on top of making sure your clients are happy and content. But I believe in compartmentalizing your life. And if you get to this, you build your business right, then you'll have time to spend with your family, to go on those nice vacations, and to do what you love, your passion. And that's an incredibly important part, to be able to take that breather back. And I love the fact that I can be going one way in my business and then go another direction, do my music and my art, that I love, and then switching back and forth, because by having those options, I don't get it allows me to have more breathing time, and to be taking that take a breath in the business, not just going gung-ho, where you can get stressed if you're just doing like 100% of the time from 12 hours a day just on biz. Well, it does stress you out, but because I have time to like drop my girls off at school and pick them up and have conversation with my spouse at the end of the day, and participate in my community church as well, and as a musician, and go play soccer on Friday nights, and then play in a community. I feel very fulfilled in life, and because I'm able to do those things. And I think by being able to fulfill my personal ambitions, it also makes me more relaxed and in front of my clients, and happier as a business owner. But the other thing, to another point I would like to make is that, well, we know we're not always going 100%. I typically go from gear 1 to gear 5, and so, but when I'm in a lower vibration, well, those are times where I tend to do more studying and courses, and maybe not as out there in my business, but I'm taking a step back and really building on the business. But when I'm in like that 5th gear, at the high vibration, then I try to multitask it and take that business to the next level, right? Really. So that's, for example, doing this mega success where I'm going to be giving a 7-minute talk in front of, probably 5,000 people with these, celebrity. That's a step that I've reached a certain level that I've taken on that additional risk, because I'm at that stage where, but you're not, you got to give yourself permission to whatever stage you're at. It's okay. Well, if I'm not in the highest, I'm not feeling great, I'm going through a little depression, or I've had some family member that's passed away, or whatever you separated, or whatever you're dealing with, you really have to work on yourself. And if you're dealing with a trauma or something, you have to get that fixed first before you can take your business, because it's unrealistic to, if you have personal things you're dealing with, to be able to become, you have to get that, you have to fix yourself first before you can fix your business too. So, I've been through that, like and I think most entrepreneurs, you go through that roller coaster ride, but you have to be able to give yourself permission that it's okay, if you're not feeling 100%, you need to take a step back. And then when you get to, until you're at the stage where you're ready to go, full speed ahead, then you can, launch at the next level. So, that's one thing I would like to, the only thing I would like to add is to own your truth, and so you can live your dream.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. I think you made a really good point in closing. People refer to your business life or your work life and your personal life, and I often point out that those are useful for explaining things, but they're artificial constructs because we don't have two lives. We have one life, and they're both interdependent on each other, right? If one's not in good shape, the other one won't be in good shape. So good point about making sure that you fix yourself if there's any fixing that needs before you can go out and fix your business. So really appreciate it. It was very interesting. We've only met a couple of times. I got to know you a little bit better today, and I look forward to getting to know you even more as time goes on, as we have a lot of common interests. So once again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today, and I look forward to touching base in the near future. Oh, you froze. Hopefully that wasn't your internet or our internet. You are temporarily frozen. I thought you were really paying attention, but you are frozen right now. So I'll give it a couple of seconds here to see if it comes back. If not, I will end. And folks, on behalf, I'm just going to thank Paul one more time. There it's gone. Oh. Hi, Paul. We froze there and we lost the internet for a bit, but I think we got most of it. So I'm going to sign off for now, get ready for my client, and we'll be in touch. I don't know, were you hearing me the whole way, or did I cut out on you?
Sorry, I don't know. I don't know if it was my internet or I did freeze and cut out for a couple of minutes there, but I think you were just concluding. So